Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Jessica Newworth, and I'm the president of the ERA Coalition, and I'm also one of the Grow Fellowship leaders. And I'm not going to speak long because we're having a panel afterwards. I just wanted to welcome you, to let you know that we have to start right away. I know a lot of people are going to be trickling in, so I apologize in advance if that disturbs you. But I wanted to just quickly introduce Tamara and Elena, two of the Grow Fellows, and give them a chance to say hi.
Hello, everyone, and thank you again for coming. We really hope you enjoy this film. This film is our introduction to the ERA as an important issue, and we hope that you guys get as inspired by it as we did. So, hope you enjoy.
Yes, for the panel, we also have 6 campuses from all over the country joining us, and their logos are right there, so that's pretty exciting. They will be streaming the panel online at 7:45.
And we will also be fielding questions from you guys. You just have to send it to our Twitter using the hashtag AskERADay. So if you have any questions while the film is playing, just tweet it to us and we'll try to get it to ask to the panel. Thank you.
We are so delighted. This is the first ever Campus Day organized by the Eva Kasten Grow Fellows of Hunter College in New York City. One of the partners of this gathering is the ERA Coalition. I serve on the board of directors. It's our mission to make sure that the ERA gets passed in our lifetime. And even if it doesn't happen in my lifetime, it may happen in your lifetime, especially talking to you guys on the campuses there. We're thrilled you're here. You've just seen this film. Kamala Lopez spent 8 years working on this film, and as I always say, after I watch it, I have a spell of anger because it points out in so many, many ways how women are discriminated against and how hard it is to break through. And we believe that the ERA is the solution to all of that, fixing our Constitution so that it includes women, people of color, people with disabilities, people with different gender orientations and expressions. So we know that we have hard work to do so that people of all races and types are included in the Constitution of the United States. In addition to this film that Kamala Lopez put together, there is a book that Jessica Newworth, who's the president of the ERA Coalition, has written as well. If you want to use that for a future study, it's also called Equal Means Equal, and we hope you will get a copy of that. So in interest of introducing our campuses across the country, we would like very much for the Grow Fellows to come forward. Tamara Jean, Elena Klein, Yin Lamas, Aaliyah Meyer, and Laura Montoya. So they are each going to introduce a college that they've been mentoring and monitoring. So go ahead, women.
So we just want to send a special thank you to Elon University and remind everyone at Elon to tweet at AskERADay to get your questions asked to the panel. And thank you for joining us all the way from North Carolina.
We also welcome in the University of Kansas, and also please tweet or email us our questions.
And we would like to also extend our warm welcome to Tuvalu and Millsaps College. Thank you so much for joining us.
We'd like to welcome Prescott College. They're tuning in all the way from Prescott, Arizona. And we'd like to encourage them to ask us their questions as well using the hashtag up there, AskERADay.
Last but not least, Georgetown Law. Thanks for joining us, and we got some of your questions already, so we'll be reading them shortly. Thank you.
But keep them coming.
Great, great. Glad to hear that. Keep those questions coming. Thank you, fellows. Would like to introduce our esteemed panel at this point. The first member we've just had a terrific time hearing from her is Betty Dukes. Betty, please come forward as I continue this introduction to you, a female employee of Walmart. She had a complaint, and so did 1.6 million other women working for the company. Alleging gender discrimination in salary and promotions, Betty sued in a class action suit. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court. In June 2011, that court ruled against them all in a 5-4 decision, saying that they had not proven that they were actually a class. She retired after 21 years with the company, fighting against them for 15 of those years. And when she begins her conversation, she will tell you down to the month and the week and the day that she continued to work for Walmart. Carolyn Maloney is the congresswoman. She represents the 12th district in New York City, the first woman to do so. Carolyn, come forward. She has authored and passed more than 70 bills, one of the top bill passer in Congress, brought more than $7 billion in appropriations to the city, and fought for women's rights, whether anti-sex trafficking, and for funds for rape kit testing, and especially as a leader in Congress to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. HJ Resolution 33 reads, "Women shall have equal rights in the United States and every place subject to its jurisdiction. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." Doesn't that sound pretty simple and straightforward? We'll hear more about that. Patricia Arquette. When actor-activist Patricia Arquette accepted her Oscar for the film Boyhood, she opened the door, and some would say she kicked it open, for a much-needed discussion about pay equity. Before and since, come on over. Before and since, she has been a tireless advocate for women in support of the ERA demanding testing for rape kits and fairness for the transgender community. Most recently, she was the recipient of the Vanguard Award from GLAAD. She is also an executive producer of the film that we just saw. And you're ready to kick again, right? You know, Patricia is always ready to. And she's worn the shoes for it today, too. Gloria Steinem, feminist, social and political activist, writer, icon. She describes herself as a wandering organizer. In her latest book, My Life on the Road, she says, "When people are ranked instead of linked, everyone loses." Soon to be announced 2 endowed academic positions named for her in honor of her lifelong work. One at Smith, her alma mater, which is a professorship linked to history, using history in activism, and at Rutgers, the very first chair of feminism, culture, and media. There never has been one before, but named in Gloria's honor. And thank you all so much. Can we have a round of applause in the room and elsewhere for these distinguished women? And I have to start with Betty because, all right, give us that. How long is it now?
21 years, 7 months, and 6 days.
6 days. Tomorrow it will be 7 days. The fellows put together some questions, and that's what this first series of questions is. And they wanted to know, so what do you think now, Betty? I mean,
Well, after 21 years and 7 months of working in an environment that I considered and come to call family, I'm going now in a different direction because that era has ended and the work yet goes on, and we were not able to accomplish what we set out to accomplish when we ended up at the Supreme Court in June of 2011. That was the first defeat that the Duke's case suffered, was at the hands in the highest court of the land. But I'm still more determined now is to stay focused on women issues, women causes, because when women are strong, the family is strong, and society as a whole prospers and do better. And my goal is that I've always been familiar with the ERA, but I'm going to lend as much of my energy as I can in what I call these declining years. I was blessed to turn 67 last month.
you're still a baby.
Thank
Baby.
you. And I won't be around forever, because none of us will. But I'm determined to do that what I can in regards of women's equality. And truly, equals means equal. And to every man that might be under the sound of my voice, and to every man that might be gazing upon my face, I'm here to tell you I am just as equal with you if I had a penny in my pocket or if I had $1 million in my bank account. Your gender has no place to determine that you can live better than I can. Equal means equal.
Equal means equal.
I thank you.
I just saw a tweet about Venus Williams, who apparently won the Australian Open but was pregnant.
Yeah.
And whoever it was who was writing that tweet said, every man should just shut up now, you know. If she can do that, well, you know, we still want men to talk. You know, we have great men in the audience here today.
We need men for pregnancy.
Betty says
and
we need
many
you.
other things.
We need you for pregnancy. Congresswoman Maloney, now how many years has it been now? I always try to get the firm number that you've introduced the ERA resolution into Congress.
I've introduced it 11 times, and I reintroduced it the day after the inspiring Women's March that we all participated in. And if we could take that energy and put it towards passing it, we could finally make it happen, I truly believe.
And what are you doing precisely? We know you're working hard, and we heard earlier that you pledged a 6-month push for the ERA.
I tell you, there is nothing that, I truly believe there's nothing that I could be working on or that you could be working on that would be more important than passing and ratifying and placing into the Constitution the Equal Rights Amendment. I spend most of my time in Congress just fighting to hold on to what we've already gained. And if you care about equal pay for equal work, and it's been roughly 35 years since the ratification did not work for the ERA, but during that 30 years, literally for 30 years, the difference has not budged. We're still at 79 cents to the dollar, and that's totally, totally unfair. So if you pass the Equal Rights Amendment, and it's the law of the land, then it's enforceable. It's that simple, and it's how you could get equal pay for equal work. Last year, on Equal Pay Day, with the help of Patricia Arquette, who came and helped me with a report that the Joint Economic Committee at the time I was the ranking member on it, it showed not only the 79 cents to the dollar, but what it meant over a lifetime. And it showed that because of the unequal pay, women were twice as likely as men to live in poverty in their old age, and because of it compounds your Social Security, your pension, and it's just incredibly unfair. So I introduced it. It's bipartisan. We have over 101 co-sponsors. We have introduced it on the state level. Rebecca Seawright just called me. She thinks her resolution may move in the state Senate, state assembly. And so there's just a lot that we need to do. Since we're at the Eleanor Roosevelt House, I recall her great quote. Eleanor Roosevelt used to say, "It's up to the women." And it is up to you. And I'm looking at the future leaders of our country, and it's up to you to turn this into a reality. It's up to the women and like-minded men. It's long overdue. It's unfair. If you care about your country, when women succeed, America succeeds. And I thank you, Jessica Neuwirth, for bringing us all together and making this happen.
Okay, for Jessica. So Patricia, we've been watching you. We watched you the night, the Oscar, that famous night when we thought you were just going to say, "Thank you, I don't deserve it, but I accept it anyway." And instead, you said, women deserve equal pay, and we've got to do it right now. So talk a little bit about what's happened since then.
Well, you know, I think Kamala makes an incredible argument in this film, and clearly she worked very hard for 8 years to make this. And but I want to say that every week, really, there's a demonstration of why we need to pass the ERA. For instance, in the last couple of years, there have been several states that have passed laws towards equal pay, but many states still don't. And the two states where women make the least amount of money, Mississippi and Alabama, there's no proposed bills. So again, we don't have a federal policy, so it's a piecemeal legislation from state to state. Another two points I'd like to make is most people don't know that in 7 states, women can be compelled to co-parent with their rapist. The rapist that impregnates them with their child, they then have to co-parent with for the next 18 years of their life. So, you know, there's obviously the majority of those rape victims, I mean, they're all women, possibly, maybe there's a man somewhere, but again, you could look at that. I know those men haven't given birth to the babies. Again, you could look at that as disparate impact. If you had the Equal Rights Amendment, like, why are these victims of this crime being forced to then continually have an interaction with their assaulter? Why is that? And also, I'd like to say that recently an abortion bill was put forth, and in it, and this goes back to what the point Kamala makes in the movie, or I think actually you may make this point in the movie, where you said originally when the Constitution was written, women were chattel. They were the property of their husbands or their fathers. So this new abortion bill was set forth, and it said that single women, no matter their age, would have to get their parents' approval for an abortion. So if you were 40 years old, you would have to go again to your father or your mother to get approval. And, you know, that specific part of single women is again bringing you back to the point of you're basically your husband's property or your father's property. And so we have to really think about all the millions of ways that this is impacting us. And it's not just locked into this moment of this movie. It's continually happening all the time.
Okay, Gloria Steinem, as you may know, I don't know how many in the audience and on the campuses actually marched on January 21st. You may know that, okay, good representation here in the room, we hope, on the campuses as well. Gloria Steinem was chosen by these young women, these 4 dynamic young women who were putting together that march. They said the only person who can really lead us is Gloria Steinem, and so she was the chair.
There was Harry Belafonte, and there was a few other.
Gloria and Harry.
The golden oldies were together.
So the question that the fellows want to know, Gloria, is about your thoughts about this new wave, about the fellows, and about this new crop of women coming along.
Despite all the danger we are in, and without for a moment underplaying that, I mean, it's deep, okay? But what makes me feel optimistic is that these current generations, plural, of activists are woke. And the danger is part of the reason we are woke, right? So now I feel there is a real contagion of energy and organizing and activism that's just bubbling up from everywhere. And also there is a realism about the problems. I think when we started to work toward the Equal Rights Amendment, felt that it was left over from the suffragist era. So it was kind of tame and, well, certainly we could do that, and it just sounded like, you know, and we did not understand. In fact, we got educated by the ratification process that the state legislatures were the problem. And now I think because students know that it's state legislatures that are spending money building prisons instead of paying for education in state universities, and know, you know, that it is the state legislatures that redistrict themselves into perpetuity by, you know, finagling, and know from looking at the abortion struggle, for instance, that it is state legislatures now, because the a ban that the ultra-right-wing wanted in the Constitution has failed. So now they have gone to getting all kinds of artificial restrictions. You have to be a whole hospital to have a clinic, you know, whatever it is, state by state by state. So I think the combination of the wokeness of everybody and the sophistication and the knowledge of state legislatures, which is what we didn't pay enough attention to. We paid more attention to Washington than we did to the state legislatures. I think that will make the difference.
Okay, so that will make a difference. I see the thumbs flying over here, so that must mean that we've got some questions. Aaliyah? Tamara, you're going to start? Okay, great.
So we are going to start with a question from Prescott College in Arizona. What non-government organizations or entities are the biggest opposition to women's rights? And one more time, that's from Prescott in Arizona.
All right, what's non-governmental, the biggest, did you want to take
Anybody
that?
who's paying unequally stands to lose a lot of money by paying equally. Walmart. Hello, Betty?
Hello.
Yes, right. The single biggest employer in the whole
And
country.
Patricia, you've spent some time with Salesforce, which is a company that has tried to do the right thing and now twice has had to make, they're the good guys, and they twice have had to make adjustments.
Yeah, they did their own gender audit and made corrections and found they were paying $3 million less. And then they did another gender audit this year after acquiring a lot of companies and did a gender race audit and found they were, again, underpaying $3 million. And again, they fixed that themselves. But one of the things I've heard in Washington, D.C., two things that I've heard that I think are important are, one said the small business bureaus are very against equal pay, and they have a big lobbying voice in Washington, so that's important. I agree with you. State legislature, and a lot of lawmakers have said to me, governors are very important to get on board, and we know that there's several states, and some are kind of, really, Illinois never ratified the Equal Rights Amendment. We're lucky Nevada just did. That's the good news. But there's definitely more states we could put pressure on, I think.
Carolyn?
The leaders of the movement, the first movement of which Gloria was one of them, have told me that the biggest opposition when they were trying to ratify it came from insurance companies and businesses that were discriminating in their pay. Now, insurance companies were notorious for charging women 2, 3, 4, or 5 times more for their insurance than a woman. And pregnancy was treated as a pre-existing condition. You couldn't get insurance. I can't tell you how many women came to my office that were pregnant and they could not get insurance. Thanks to the Affordable Care Act, that changed. One of the most important parts of that bill is that you can no longer discriminate in insurance between a man and a woman, and pre-existing conditions are covered. So that was a major part of it. And as Gloria said, it was those people who want to pay less. In our Joint Economic Committee report, it showed over the lifetime of a woman, the discrimination was at least $500,000. That's a lot of money. So it's an economic argument. It's an economic challenge. And for the young people here, you're very confident and full of life, but you can go out and go to work, and I'd say because of the women's movement and the labor movement, you'll walk in the door paid equally, because it's just too much to pay a woman much less than a man walking through the door. But research shows 5 years out, when you start being promoted, the discrimination comes, and it is deep and it's strong, and sometimes it's 17 points, 20 points in most of the fields that employ women.
Aaliyah, you have another question?
Okay, so our next question is coming from Katie here at Hunter College, and it says, the fight against sexual assault across college campuses has been an uphill battle. How do you think the ERA is involved in this fight?
Who wants to take on the Gloria? You've been doing some work in this area.
Well, you know, I think first of all, the idea that women matter, that women's bodies belong to ourselves, hello, you know, that we, bodily integrity, that we are not somehow appendages or the means of production for somebody else or somebody else's means of labor. I mean, you know, it's a deep cultural bias that applies in both cases. that somehow we are not whole people, and we don't deserve bodily rights, we don't deserve equal pay, we don't, it's all of a piece. And I would say at the other end of it, what the two things share is that they are both basic, not small, as they are treated. That violence against females, including sexualized violence on campus or anyplace else, is the biggest indicator of whether a country will be violent within itself or willing to use military violence against another country. And equal pay would be the biggest economic stimulus this country could ever have. So on the one hand, there is the idea in both cases that it's this little thing over here, and in fact, in both cases, it's fundamental and basic, and you just can't fix much of anything unless you fix this.
Unless you fix it all. Betty, did you want to comment on this?
Yes, I wanted to say that in equal rights, it should be for all. Women should have the same right as men is to walk down a dark corridor on a college as a man does without even thinking about being assaulted. The only thing about it, once she becomes assaulted in various environments, the penalty against men is very limited. If on the colleges for thought, if it has to be proven that it happened. And once it is proven that it's happened, the perpetrator needs to be incarcerated for life to send the message out that it will not be accepted. No parole. You can give up you can get parole if you leave that part of you back in prison that disturbs society. That'll be your bargaining chip. They'll remove it and you can be paroled. I know that doesn't mean that other means won't happen, but it's something for them to think about before they go through the process. Now, as far as that's the equal rights is a pie with huge amount of slices in it. This is just one, or two, or three that we're going to be addressing tonight. The sexual brutality. The lower wages for women's against men, with the men making more and the women's making 79. That's the men's is $1 and the woman's 79, and then it gets less and less for minority stuff. That's brutality. That is brutality against the woman. And you don't have to accept being brutalized. You can fight, push, and climb the hill to make the difference. I often say sometimes you just have to put Mount Everest on your shoulder. And you have to take it up the hill, determined that when you get there, the victory will be yours. We can do this. I call it GID, G-I-D. We can do this.
We can do this.
We can
Everybody
do
in
this.
the room.
Let's
we can do this.
We can do this. And the time is now.
Okay. I just wanted to say one thing before I forgot. Yes, we had things like Title IX to try to address these things because we don't have equal rights. So we're trying to patchwork this system all the time. And we know with this new administration, they're trying to take back Title IX. And before Title IX, girls had, I think, 3% of the budget was spent on girls' sports. And now it's 42%. Now we have female soccer teams, winning World Cups. We have, again, Serena Williams winning a Grand Slam while pregnant. And still those guys are all fighting for equal pay. And still they're getting paid much less. But these girls were able to grow up after the 70s, after Title IX. We're going to be ending the future of female sports if we let them take back the things that we've earned through Title IX. And again, I think we need to have a double safe protection depending on who's in office at any time by passing the Equal Rights Amendment.
Great. And so how, you have questions. How are they coming in? Do we have a lot? Oh, we have a lot. Okay. All right, let's see if we can blaze through these now.
Okay, our next question is from Kansas University. The ERA, and I think she's specifically talking about the text of the ERA,
is based on a binary sex clause. Do you think it is possible to have the wording changed to gender to be more inclusive?
Yes, we've just, Carol and I and all of us have been working on more inclusive language. I think there are ways in which the current language applied well, in fact, does the same thing, because it is against discrimination based on sex or gender, and that has to do with chosen sex and gender as well. But I think there's a possibility of having more explicit wording so that it will be more clear.
Right, and Jessica Newworth has spearheaded some of the drafting of the language for that, which will a complementary piece to Carolyn's work, and she's said she's going to sign on to it as well. Right? But it's a bill that will include sex, race, faith, pregnancy, disability, orientation, expression, those kinds of things that really speak to the number of people and the kinds of people that were excluded from the Constitution. It wasn't just women. It was, frankly, everybody else except white slave-owning, land-owning men. So yes, Aaliyah?
So our next question is coming from Brooke, who's at Georgetown Law. And her question is, as the Freedom to Marry used the state strategy where they targeted states first before attacking the entire federal government to get the freedom to marry whoever you want to be passes legislation, has any state or local efforts, are there any state or local efforts underway to amend the Constitution from an ERA perspective?
Yes. All right, who wants to tackle that? Carolyn, do you want to? Well, you know, we just had, I think Patricia alluded to, Nevada that finally just ratified the ERA from the 1970s. And there are some other states that are attempting to do that too. It's called the three-state solution. There are some who believe that that ultimately will not work. Patricia, do you want to?
Well, there's a lot of different states that have a ground game right now, and if you're in those states, would really be great to support those causes. North Carolina has an active campaign. Illinois, I think Virginia has presented several times and come close to some extent. Obviously, the more states that ratify, the easier it will be to either try to roll back the deadline or to go back and get those anew. Whichever case it may end up being, it doesn't matter. The more states, the better, and it should become an overwhelming thing where every state is ratified.
Yeah, I think the answer to either or, you know, sometimes speaking of binary, the last question, I think the whole world is divided into two kinds of people, those who divide everything into two and those who don't, right? We don't, okay, right. And in this case, too, I think the question of whether state legislatures or federal legislation, we're doing both, right? It's not either or, it's both. Because there are some states that have passed an Equal Rights Amendment and others have passed it and not enacted it, and what's of it, so that is going at the same time that a congressional federal effort is going with gay rights. The first legislation was passed federally by Bella Abzug, our own New York member of Congress, and then when it came to marriage equality, it started to go state by state. But, so it's not either or, it's really both.
We have another question.
This one is from Elon University in North Carolina. What are some things we as students can do at the ground level to help push for an ERA?
Okay, students want to get busy.
Well, you could pass it, an Equal Rights Amendment in your city, town, whatever, in your city council.
So Gloria's suggesting
that
local,
will educate
that
people.
Local. Yeah.
Right. As well as educate yourself and your colleagues and your campus about why we need it federally in the Constitution.
Carolyn?
You could certainly encourage your senators and your members of Congress to be co-sponsors of any legislation that promotes equality for women, either the state-by-state strategy or the equal rights strategy, anything. And women and like-minded men, we're over half the population. If we would just say, hey, we're not going to vote for you unless you support these important measures, we would have passed it last year and certainly would pass it next year. Most legislators listen to the people they represent more than anyone. So go to your legislators. Ask them, do they support equal rights? Ask them if they're co-sponsors of the legislation. If they say to you, of course I support it, and if it gets to the floor, I'll vote for it, that's not good enough. If you support it, co-sponsor the legislation. And they don't support it unless they co-sponsor it.
So I'd like to just say one more thing. You know, we've seen a lot of really interesting things this week with Fox News and Bill Riley and a Twitter and campaign in Facebook about putting pressure on different companies that advertise. So you guys are the youth. You guys know how to do this. I can barely write a letter to somebody. I mean, I can't barely type on a Twitter. The numbers are too small. So if you guys could just like really get the ground game moving as far as social media and all of that, and get that conversation happening, I think that would be really amazing too.
Yeah, and the ERA Coalition has in the brochures here that are given out in the auditorium and also online for the campuses, as Carolyn suggested, get in touch with your member of Congress. It used to be very unsexy to do that sort of thing when somebody would say, write your congressperson or call them, they'd say, ugh. Now, of course, it's the best thing to do. And if you go to our website, we actually have a map that will tell you whether or not your Congress people are supporting Carolyn's bill, the other bills. Sign the pledge that's there and support our work, and don't forget to have house parties. Like, you can download the film, Kamala's film, and you can see that, and you can engage your friends in this effort. One more question.
And Elon University, I believe, is in North Carolina. There's not one single co-sponsor for the legislation from the great state of North Carolina. So you could do a lot of good work for us by getting your Congress members and senators to support it. Thank you.
Excellent.
I would just like to say to the young women on the campus, and don't assume that your schoolmate knows about the Equal Rights Amendment. Be sure that you create some form of brochure, to create some form of literature that can continually circulate the school campus and put it in their hand and create little cluster groups that you can come together and brainstorm and come up with several ideas that you can pass on to your congressman as to what you think and who you are. Be sure that your voice is heard as well as your presence is felt. Please don't assume that others know about ERA, because many so involved with so many things, they just do not know, and now we need to be informed. You cannot conquer with a lack of knowledge.
Great. We want to try to, thank you, Betty. We want to try to squeeze in a couple more questions. Yeah.
Okay, so our next question is from Sanam, who is watching from Yale University. And her question is, what do you have to say to those men out there who believe in today's world there's no discrimination against women and who consider it an issue of the past?
Put on a dress. Open your eyes, get a hearing aid. Go talk to your employer, tell everybody, you know, if wherever you're working, if you just tell each other your salaries, you'll discover probably that there is a lot of inequity. But really, more seriously and deeply, I would say to that young man, there is sex discrimination that also discriminates against men. And this will also eliminate that. I mean, there are ways in which, past sex discrimination was, Ruth Ginsburg, our great Supreme Court Justice, the first case that came up in sex discrimination had to do with unequal parental rights, I believe, of Americans abroad, right? And it discriminated against men. So this also protects men.
I would say numbers don't lie. Every single report from the Census Bureau, from the economic panels, everywhere, shows in stark numbers the discrimination that exists.
One more question.
This is a question from AJ in Kansas. How has intersectionality impacted the conversation of equality over the years?
You know, I hope, I don't know, Carol and I, all of us golden oldies here, well, you're not, it's quite as oldie as I am.
We're the golden oldies, the rest of
yeah,
them.
it kind of makes us crazy because the truth is that Black women especially, African American women especially, have always been more in favor of all of these measures, statistically speaking, than white women. And we saw this in the results of the last election. And yet people still look at the women's movement and think of it as a white movement. It has always been way disproportionately a movement led and invented by women of color. And we are going to have to continue to try to make what is real visible.
I would like to say that, just piggyback a little bit on what Gloria was saying, that the role that the woman of color has played and how far out front she has been. I think the time has come now in this 21st century that we become one color in this advancement. There is no white, there is no black. What we're doing now, we're coming under the color of progress. We need this amendment that women's make progress for the next 25, 50, 100 years. There's going to come a time that color in this country is really not going to matter. What's going to matter the most is survival. And we have to position ourselves now to survive.
Thank you, Betty. Yes, question.
Okay, so the next question we just received is from Jen S., also here at Hunter College. And it says, the tiers of feminism seem to struggle with uniting and making movements that last and seem to stem from our divisions. In terms of taking action with so many issues involved, is there a platform that brings us all together?
You know, I think more than ever, now, don't you think? I mean, we have a president, he's not my president, but anyway, we have somebody up there who's against everything, so that helps to make the connections very clear. But I do think that we more and more understand that these issues cannot be addressed separately. Obviously, the environment can't be addressed, okay, that affects everything. Obviously, wherever there is racism, then sexism is way worse, because only by controlling reproduction can you maintain racial separation over the long run, or maintain class or caste, as in India, over the long run. So these two things have always been intertwined. And I do think that although movements tend to grow up, groups come along and somebody's been invisible, they say, here I am, and I'm naming myself, and I'm making, so maybe we come up as individual movements. But the next stage is that we see that we are connected. They say God is in the details, the goddess is in the connections. And I think we are beginning to see that very clearly.
I think also for me, this idea of this new language that's really more broadly inclusive, I don't want to do this my whole life. I don't want death by 1,000 cuts. I don't want to have to fight, for women's rights, LGBTQ rights, racial equality. My father was Muslim, my mother was Jewish. Like, okay, what about racial?
That explains
the right
it
to free
all,
religion.
Patricia.
Right, exactly. So to me, the idea that we could come together and address multiple issues and protect many people all at once is really a beautiful idea. And then we can move on to other important things.
One of the experiences that we had, the ERA Coalition, was in helping to draft the mission statement for the Women's March, which we know is the biggest one ever, 5 million people. But you know how they put up the Google thing and everybody adds something? There were so many issues, and at the end we all had to agree, and at the end we did. But no one, we were talking about the ERA, it's gotta be in this mission statement, and then there was the homelessness, and then there was transgender, and then everything. But in the end, we all came to agree that for this purpose,
going forward, we needed to become allies and no longer stay in our silos, but work together. So I really do think that we are getting there. Yes, one.
And this last one is from Prescott College in Arizona. Are we approaching a fourth wave of feminism? And if so, what issues define it?
Wow, good question. Fourth wave. What about the fourth wave of feminism? What? Gloria was the second wave, and now she's the fourth wave as well.
You know, I'm not sure that I really believe in the wave theory, because it sort of depends on who you are and where you are. If you grew up in a family that was very political and very aware and very anti-racist and feminist and so, you know, you may be in the third or fourth wave already. But if you grew up in a very traditional or very conventionally religious family, or you may be practically a suffragist, you know, in order to lift up your head, or you're only in the second wave. So it has to do with consciousness, I think. So I think it's more important to me to talk to each other and listen to each other and understand each other's experiences than it is to be subsumed by the idea of historical waves, which sometimes can separate us. Oh, well, this person is a third wave, and this is a fourth wave, and so on and so on. That separates us artificially. I know, I mean, the only way I can express how I feel about all the huge numbers of young feminists now, women and men, way more than when I started, way more, you know, is that I just had to wait for some of my friends to be born.
Right, well, great. Listen, this is a conversation that could go on all night, but I think we're going to be asked to vacate the premises here in the auditorium. But I want to thank so much the campuses that joined us. You were terrific, great questions. We will do this again, we promise, and thanks so much to our panelists. Betty, thank you for coming in expressly for this. Carolyn, for your hard work. Gloria and Patricia. And our Grove Fellows, thank you all so much.